What is going on, everybody? In today's video, we are hopping right into a 12-team full PPR mock for the 2024 fantasy football season. We're going to be rolling with one quarterback, two running backs, two wide receivers, a tight end, and two flex spots, as well as five bench spots. So far throughout the offseason, I have a video from the 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, and now from the 1.4 throughout the rest of the week. I will be trying to get a video up from every draft position, so make sure you guys are checking on the channel if you need to see a mock from a different draft position, as well as go ahead and check out all of the live streams that I've been doing over the past couple months. I have mock drafts from all over the place in the same format, as well as tons of real fantasy football drafts that you guys can check out on the channel as well. If you guys are new to the channel, this is all we do here all year long. Free fantasy football content, redraft, dynasty, and best ball. Trying to do whatever I can to help you guys win your fantasy football leagues. If you guys are new, go ahead and join the community by hitting that subscribe button down below and drop any fantasy football questions you guys have in the comments down below. I'll get back to you whenever I can. In today's video, we'll be breaking down a strategy for drafting from the 1.4, what players I like throughout each round, and just overall give you guys a breakdown what I would be doing if I was drafting from the 1.4 in this format. So let's not waste any more time. Let's hop right into today's video. All right, so drafting from the 1.4, I think is a pretty decent position this year. It's really simple when you're looking at that first overall selection. Don't overthink it. Go with the best available wide receiver on the board. I think there's a little bit of a tier break between these top tier wide receivers and the running backs who come up a little bit later in the first round. But I mean, if you want to go Brees Hall, if you want to go Bijan Robinson, I think that you can. I don't have an issue with that. But I think this tier of JJ Chase or Amon-Ra St. Brown, whoever you prefer, once again, I think any one of those three guys is fine. I've been drafting a lot of Amon-Ra St. Brown a little bit earlier, a little bit ahead of JJ and Chase, but I know there are other fantasy managers out there who are also doing the same. So whatever you want to go with, I prefer wide receiver there, JJ, Amon-Ra, or Jamar Chase. I think there's an argument for any of those guys to go off the board. If you want to go Bijan or Brees Hall, I think that is okay as well. If I truly believe either of those running backs could finish as the RB1 this year, I think they are both locks as long as they stay healthy for top 5 running backs. But what we're going to do, whether we go running back or wide receiver in the first round, is we're just going to alternate between positions. So we went wide receiver in the first round. The second round, we're going with the best available running back. The third round, we'll go with the best available wide receiver. And then the fourth round, we'll repeat and we will go with the best available running back. We'll just kind of alternate those two positions, and you can just do the opposite if you want to truly go Brees Hall or Bijan Robinson at the 1-4. You want to go running back in the first round, start with a running back, then go wide receiver, running back, wide receiver, and then you just kind of continue that throughout your entire draft. You're going to come out with a very strong overall roster. Let a good value tight end come to you. I think there are some really strong tight ends going a little bit later that we'll talk about in tonight's mock. And let a good value quarterback go to you. I think right now in single quarterback 12-team leagues, you don't need to spend an early draft selection on one of those top tier quarterbacks. There are players like Jordan Love, Dak Prescott going very late. And even if you don't, land one of those quarterbacks, I like Kyler Murray in that range as well. There's still plenty of talent. I mean, Brock Purdy, Jared Goff, Tua. There's later guys like Trevor Lawrence, Kirk Cousins, Matthew Stafford, some rookie upside, and a player like Jaden Daniels going very late. There's just no reason to spend the draft capital on a quarterback early this year in single quarterback leagues. So we're not going to, stress about quarterback or tight end in this draft. We want to maybe put together a little bit of a tier at tight end that we don't want to miss out on, but I think you can still have a good value tight end come to you at the right time in your drafts going with this method. So, there's a good little tier of wide receivers here. Drake London still on the board. It's been a heavy running back mock so far, and I do like Drake London in this range. If he doesn't go here at the 2-8 and you wanted to go wide receiver, then go running back in the third, I think that's okay too. But we'll kind of, stick true to this format so you guys can see what it looks like. And there goes Mike Evans. So I'll go Derrick Henry here. I think he's fine as a second round value. I think I've started to see him go more in the second round in mocks lately. More people are keen to drafting Derrick Henry in the second round, and I don't quite know that he'd be available at the 3-4. So I'm okay with taking him there. But if you wanted to, let's say Drake London, who at times goes early in the second round, is available here, or maybe Devontae Adams, you feel really strongly about. You want to get one of those guys, then go running back at the 3-4 and the 4-9. You're still basically doing the same thing with this strategy, but we'll stick true to it so you guys can see what it'll look like. But yeah, I mean, heavy running back mock so far. Got everyone from C-Mac to Pacheco off the board there, as you guys can see on the screen. And then team from the 1.1 gets two really good values at wide receiver in Drake London and Chris Olave. So we will bounce back to wide receiver here. Um, you know, it's going to be hard for me to not take Devontae Adams at the 3-4 if he's there, and he is there. But that's a little bit against ADP. So to give you guys an idea of other players that I like there, I mean, I really like the entire next tier of wide receiver. I'll go ahead and take Adams off the board, but Debo Samuel, DJ Moore, Jalen Waddle, even Michael Pittman. Then looking a little bit further down, sleepers ADP. I love Devonta Smith. I think it is perfectly acceptable to draft Devonta Smith at the beginning of the third round. I think DK Metcalf's okay there. And I think Stephon Diggs is okay there as well. But the guys I really prefer, Debo, DJ Moore, Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith, and I do like Cup Metcalf. Flowers is okay, and I like Michael Pittman. But yeah, Devontae Adams, maybe in not the best offensive situation. We got Aiden O'Connell and Garner Minshew throwing him the football this year. Some people are going to be passing on him, as we saw in this mock right here. But I think you just got to look at it, break it down. He's still a top 10 PPR wide receiver last year. Those last couple of games, well, week 16 was really poor at Kansas City. The other, major games where Aiden O'Connell was the starting quarterback, 24.1 fantasy points and 37.6 fantasy points. Just got absolutely force fed. I mean, he had 21 targets in week 17. So, yeah, it's not a beautiful situation for Devontae Adams. And I'm okay if you want to potentially pass on him in the second round. But if he's there in the third round, I just think he's far too good of a value to not take there. So a good start here. I mean, we have Amon-Ra as our wide receiver 1, Devontae Adams as our wide receiver 2, and we've got Derrick Henry, who I'm perfectly okay with taking in the second round, especially at the end of the second round as our RB1. And I think with how aggressive this mock has been at running back so far, it's a good idea that we went ahead and did that. If you prefer Jacobs or Pacheco there, I think that's okay too. But we're just going to go with the best available running back in our mind at the second round selection there. And this is why I prefer to do these mock drafts with my subscriber base, with the actual community, because you guys get a much better look at what a mock draft might actually look like, right? When you're drafting against a computer or half CPU rooms, half non-computer rooms, going off of different ADPs on different platforms, it just gets crazy and unrealistic as well. So I think it's good to draft with real people and actually get an idea of what people might do, So that's why I like to do these recorded mock drafts with my community here, and definitely prefer all of our live stream mock drafts are also with the community as well. Definitely gets you much more prepared for your upcoming draft if you do it that way. But nonetheless, going into the fourth here, so we do see a string of wide receivers there go from the 3-4 all the way to the 4-3, all wide receivers except for Joe Mixon and Sam Laporta. Now our first quarterback off the board, and Josh Allen. So we're not going to panic about anything. We're just going to go with the best available running back at pick 4.9. There are a couple wide receivers on the board here that I really like, but I think we can get a good enough value at the 5-4 that we should be okay, especially with that strong start already in Amon-Ra and Devontae Adams. So there goes Zay Flowers. Great value there, getting Zay Flowers in the 4-6. So our top available wide receivers are Dell, Pickens, Higgins, Keenan Allen, Kirk, and Scary Terry. Top available running backs are Kamara, Walker, Aaron Jones, James Conner, David Monty, and DeAndre Swift. So I'll probably go Kamara if he's available, and he is. If not, I'm okay with Kenneth Walker right there, but we'll take Kamara off the board as our RB2. Just don't forget that extreme PPR upside that Kamara had last year. I mean, Alvin Kamara had double digits in every game he started. He missed the first 3 weeks, right? But weeks 4 through week 15, double digits every single game. Kind of didn't come through in the fantasy playoffs at 8.5 in week 16 and 6.9 in week 17. but turned out to be a great value where he was going in drafts last year, knowing that he was probably going to miss first couple games of the season. And I mean, he had a ceiling of 29.3 fantasy points in week 7. That PPR upside just really up there for Alvin Kamara. Even if he regresses a bit this year, just don't forget he was a top 12 fantasy running back last year. So I'm not really too afraid of taking him in the 4th round. And I know a lot of fantasy managers aren't, but some people still down on Kamara, maybe more down on the situation he's in. Don't feel great about the Saints offense, but I like him in the 4th round right there as our RB2. So looking at available wide receivers, I'll tell you guys right now, if Rashee Rice is here, I'll just take Rashee Rice. I want a piece of this Kansas City Chiefs offense. Maybe you could argue Xavier Worthy will still be on the board at 6.9. You could hold off here, maybe go with a different position, another wide receiver. But for me, I'll just go ahead and take Rashee Rice. I'm not afraid to take him as my wide receiver 4. Might prefer him as a wide receiver, or excuse me, wide receiver 3. And I might prefer him as a wide receiver 4 or 5, but you know, when he's here, I'm just going to select him. Love him as a potential flex option. To me, he's the wide receiver 1 for the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm not really worried about the suspension situation. At the moment, there's been no word between the Chiefs and the NFL on any suspension for Rashee Rice. So, similar to Alvin Kamara, who we just talked about, this situation might turn into what we saw with Kamara 2 years ago, where he didn't get suspended in the season that probably should have been suspended, and he got suspended going into last season. So might not even be a suspension for Rashee Rice until 2025. So, and even if there is a suspension this year, I've been saying it all off season long. I don't think it's going to be more than 3 to 4 games at most. So I still think Rice is a great value because he's going to be the Kansas City Chiefs wide receiver, I think, who brings the most consistent floor and still a good ceiling and really act as a true number 1 wide receiver for Patrick Mahomes and that Chiefs offense. So, looking ahead to 6.9, we're probably going to get a good blend of players gone here. You see a couple tight ends, Kelsey gone in the 4th, McBride and Andrews gone in the 5th, and now we're getting more quarterbacks going here. Hurts in the 5th, and you see Mahomes there gone in the 5th as well. But for us, we just want to go with the best available running back and stay true to this strat. For me, Zamir White, Raheem Mostert, or DeAndre Swift. I like that tier there and be happy with any of those guys as my RB3 for different reasons. But we'll see, who's available at the 6.9. Maybe we start to see some more running backs go here. And I'm sorry, DeAndre Swift already off the board at 5.7. So he will not be on this team. But yeah, I'd be okay with even Ramondre Stevenson, Zamir White, or Raheem Mostert. Any of those guys I think are great as RB3 options, but going to depend on who goes here in the 6th round. So top available wide receivers are Rome Odunze, Jaden Reed, Jordan Addison, Xavier Worthy, Calvin Ridley, and Hollywood Brown. Top available running backs are Jones, Ramondre Stevenson, Najee Harris, Zamir White, Raheem Mostert, and Nick Chubb. So this has been a pretty aggressive draft at running back. Top available quarterbacks, you still got Lamar, Stroud, Richardson, Burrow, and Prescott. Top available tight ends are Kincaid, Pitts, Kittle, Ingram, and Bauer. So let's talk about some tight ends here because part of this strategy is contingent on kind of sitting back at tight end, but I don't want to get too comfortable at tight end, and I are too lenient. And I think if you do, and you end up with like a Dallas Goddard, and maybe you want to draft like a guy like Hawkinson or Komet, if you want to go double tight end, really when you look at that kind of last tier there, Goddard, Hawkinson, Schultz, Komet, Fryermuth, Musgrave, and I think even Ben Sennett, who some leagues might go undrafted, might be a waiver wire guy, but he has the potential to have a really nice rookie season. But if you want to go with any of those guys and get 2 of them, I think that you're in a fine spot. But if you want to get a tight end 1 on your team who I think still brings upside, league winning type upside, I think you got to try and target Evan Ingram with an ADP of 67.7, who's been a top 5 tight end 2 seasons in a row, does not get treated that way. And or Jake Ferguson, who's got an ADP of 87.8, who last year finished as a tight end 9, and I think has another top 10 potential finish in him this season. So on Sleeper, I love both those guys' ADP, and I think both of them can be league-winning tight ends. All right, so let's make this selection here. Xavier Worthy is here, so if you want to look at this and say maybe you should have gone with a different player other than Rice, or you're worried about the Rice suspension, then you could have, maybe got another running back there, different wide receiver, whatever. But we'll go with Zamir White here, who is going to be a workhorse back for the Raiders. I know we have two Raiders players on this team now, so maybe if you prefer Raheem Mostert or you prefer Najee Harris there, that's okay. But Zamir White for me is a player who's going to be a true workhorse running back this year. There's no one on this depth chart that bothers me, makes me concerned. You look at Zamir White, I've been saying it all off season long when he was a workhorse running back last year for the Raiders: 17.5, 14.5, 15.6 fantasy points. And then if you play through week 18, which you probably didn't, 13.1, but it still shows he had 25 touches, 112 rushing yards in week 18. True workhorse running back. That's what this offense is contingent on. It's how this offense is ran. They want to run through a true RB1. And Zamir White is going to be that guy this year. So I love him in the 6th round. I think he's a tremendous value. But there are some other running backs that I like there, and then some players that I'm okay with. I still like Raheem Mostert. I still think he's going to be very involved in that Dolphins offense this year. And if you like Najee Harris there, I think that's fine as well. But nonetheless, we get Zamir White as our RB3. And now we will be looking ahead to the 7.4 to once again select another wide receiver. So there's a couple names here that um, I think are okay, right? I think Ladd McConkey's okay. Um, there's some rookies here like Keon Coleman or Brian Thomas that you might like. But the player that I will take here time and time again for the pure upside, who is going against ADP because he's a very deep ADP on sleeper, is Christian Watson, 100%. I do not mind Christian Watson as a wide receiver 4. You see him getting drafted much earlier in underdog drafts. Of course, those are 3 wide receiver drafts. But for me, Christian Watson at this ADP on sleeper, you just can't pass it up. It's just way too good, way too much upside. But we'll say once again, Xavier Worthy still on the board. I don't want to necessarily double dip into that Chiefs offense necessarily, but at the end of the day, he's still a good option and still at this moment not drafted. But just to give you guys a look at this team through the first 7 rounds, I mean, we look very sharp. Derrick Henry, Alvin Kamara as our RB1, RB2. We've got Zamir White, who'd probably be on the bench here, but just the way we drafted, he's in the flex. So running backs look good. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Devontae Adams, Rashee Rice, and Christian Watson. So a nice blend of kind of like consistency PPR guys here. Still have good ceilings. Another one in Rashee Rice, I think, that a nice, good upside pick in Christian Watson, who'd probably be that flex position when he is healthy. Still 4 more bench spots to go in a quarterback and tight end. And things look pretty good overall at both of those positions as Lamar Jackson now goes and Dalton Kincaid is off of the board. So good value on Lamar Jackson at the 7.7. But nonetheless, we'll kind of just keep an eye at the quarterback position. Stroud's still available. So I think that we have a good chance of landing a Prescott, Kyler Murray, or Jordan Love. For me, once that tier is gone, you kind of break into like a little bit of a lower tier, but there's still guys like I mentioned earlier that I like. Tight end, and there goes Ingram and Murray. Murray is a guy who will get drafted against ADP. Now that Ingram's gone, I will consider tight end with one of these next 2 picks. The team right in front of me or excuse me, 2 spots ahead of me at the 1-2 does not have a tight end, so that might be something to think about. Because really, for me, I want to land Jake Ferguson out of that tier, but we'll just kind of see how things look. Because I think I want to go wide receiver running back at the 8.9. And for me, I think once we land 4 running backs, we're at a good spot. But there's so many late round running backs on the sleeper app ADP right now that I like, that I'm not like overly concerned. I mean, I like Jonathan Brooks as an RB4, although he's a second half play for the year, or at least you have to wait about 3 or 4 weeks, according to reports at the time of recording this. But Brian Robinson of the Commanders, Gus Edwards of the Chargers. I like Chase Brown. I like Jerome Ford. I like Chuba Hubbard late. So we have some options here. I just don't know who would be back when we draft at like the 10.9, 11.4. So probably go ahead and get a running back here. If Stroud fell to the 8.9, that's like a spot where I might just go ahead and take quarterback. But I think, there are some wide receivers I like once again here. Brian Thomas, JSN, Jamison Williams, Cortland Sutton, all sitting here. I think we just go running back here. I'm okay with going Jonathan Brooks because I think we have a pretty strong running back room that we can kind of wait for the second half of the year, so to speak, because even if Brooks comes back in week 3 or 4, it's still going to get a couple weeks for him to get going, for him to really get those full amount of touches. Because I keep talking about it, Chuba Hubbard is not a bad running back whatsoever. Look at what Chuba Hubbard did last year when he really got going. So I like Brooks here. I think he's a nice upside play to add to this roster as our RB4. Moving ahead into the ninth round, I'm probably going to go ahead. I kind of want to risk it and go wide receiver here. But I think if we want to get Jake Ferguson, we absolutely have to take him here. I mean, we've got a couple of teams in front of us with no tight end. And then even then, like, you just never know. Oh, and he's off the board with Michael from our community, who is notorious for sniping me, goes ahead and takes him there with already having Trey McBride. But I mean, I don't really I see more like kind of bully tight ends being, or bully tight end builds being formed. And I don't really dislike it. Sometimes with the tight ends, the best available player on the board, I'm okay with it. Um, I might like that more in best ball drafts, underdog drafts, but at the end of the day, I think that pick is okay. And we'll take Jamison Williams here. I mean, I love Jamison Williams as an upside selection in this round. I think Romeo Dobbs is okay. And I think Cortland Sutton is also an okay pick as well. He's still the wide receiver 1 for the Broncos. So we did have Amon Ra on this team, but at least that kind of adds some more upside to our roster. Once we're kind of in these rounds, I think round 7, 8, 9, this kind of area, you want to be drafting for upside. And we definitely have done that with getting Watson, Jonathan Brooks, and Jamison Williams on this team. Do not forget that I am still running several streams throughout the week where I am hopping into real 2024 fantasy football drafts on Underdog Fantasy. If you guys don't want to wait any longer to draft 2024 fantasy football teams, you don't have to. Underdog has all kinds of different unique contests that you guys can enter, including their flagship Best Ball Mania, where somebody is going to win up to $1.5 million. This is the best way to prepare for the upcoming fantasy football season. These are the sharpest drafts throughout the offseason. Plus, Underdog already has week 1 NFL pick'ems out where you guys can play in their new streaks format and win up to 1000x your money. Promo code the catch, the link is down below as well. Get you a first time 50% deposit match up to $250 plus a mystery pick'em that you guys can use towards that streaks up to 1000x your money. Promo code the catch. Don't forget, when you sign up, we'll get you that first time 50% deposit match on Underdog Fantasy. All right, so let's take a look at the roster. Henry, Kamara, St. Brown, Adams, Rashee Rice, Zamir White, Christian Watson, Jonathan Brooks, Jamison Williams. We got 2 bench spots, a tight end spot, and a quarterback spot to fill. So I think we're in good shape. I mean, right now, Dak Prescott and Jordan Love are on the board still. We'll see if they last. One of those guys is there at the 10-9. The teams in front of me, 2 of them have a quarterback, 1 of them does not. So we'll just kind of see if we feel like taking them there. We could go ahead and select one of those guys. There are like 1 or 2 running backs that they fall, like a Blake Corum, for example. I like Zach Charbonnet. Chuba Hubbard would be okay. Kind of handcuff Jonathan Brooks there, or at least get the starter for the first couple of weeks for the Panthers. Once again, Chuba Hubbard last year when he got going, double digits every week between weeks 12 and week 17, and week 18. Although he didn't play, once again, similar to Zamir White, he was a workhorse back, 23 touches, 83 yards on the ground, 11.2 fantasy points. So Chuba Hubbard, who just got selected at the 10-3, a guy I've been talking about a lot throughout the offseason, and lately I'm like, guys, you got to pay attention to Chuba Hubbard's ADP because people are figuring out that he's going to be a starter for the first couple weeks of the season and probably still get touches once Jonathan Brooks is healthy. But yeah, Blake Corum's on the board. I consider him at 10-9. I think he's a good pick there, too good of a value to pass up. Romeo Dobbs keeps sliding in drafts, and people keep forgetting him. I mean, he had the same amount of touchdowns as Jaden Reed in that same offense last year. And Jordan Love has great chemistry with Romeo Dobbs. I know we have Watson here, kind of double dipping into the Raiders, Lions, and Packers at that point. And there goes Dobbs, but I think he's an okay pick. As we're kind of venturing into these later round wide receivers, the guys I like are Rashid Shaheed and Josh Downs. I think that those 2 guys kind of in these later ADPs are my favorite wide receivers. Still like Brandon Cooks. I know we've been getting some Jalen Tolbert hype. I like Dontavion Wicks, Jahan Dotson, Ricky Pearsall. So there's still names there. I'll stay true to form here, though. We'll go Blake Corum. I think he's too good of a selection here to pass up. I think that makes for a great running back room. And at this point, with Dak Prescott and Jordan Love already off the board, I think we're kind of moving into a lower tier quarterback and a lower tier tight end. So we'll just go ahead and go best available quarterback at 11.4, or maybe best available tight end. We'll see who's there. All right, so like one or two quarterbacks gone there in Purdy or Tua, who I do like in this range. But I think we got some decent tight ends here. So let's just take Dallas Goddard off of the board. That's going to be our tight end one. And now we have one additional bench spot and one quarterback spot as well. So I think we'll be okay. In terms of quarterback targets here, I mean, we still got Goff. If you want to go double quarterback here, because I think we're pretty solid at wide receiver, we're definitely good enough at running back. But I like a combination of Jaden Daniels than any of the lower tier quarterbacks here. Like, you pair Jaden Daniels with Jared Goff. I love that. You pair him with Trevor Lawrence. I love that. You kind of get like more of a pocket passer, like maybe lower ceiling, but good enough floor player. Then you get an upside player like Jaden Daniels, who maybe potentially is going to have some injury risk. So I don't mind pairing Jaden Daniels with these last two selections either. I'm also okay with guys like Cousins and Stafford if we had to go that route as well. But I think Goddard's fine as a tight end one. You could also kind of do the opposite where maybe there's one quarterback here at the end that you feel strongly about and you want to put a second tight end behind Dallas Goddard. I think that's okay as well. Or maybe you just want to draft a guy like TJ Hawkinson, who more than likely, I mean, almost 100%, you're going to be able to put on the IR to start the year. There he goes at the 11.10. And then as soon as your draft is over, throw him on IR, right? And then you go pick up a player off the waiver wire theoretically. So he's definitely an option here in these rounds as well, although he just got selected. So not an option for us, but in terms of tight ends that I would consider here, if we wanted to take a second, Cole Kmet, Luke Musgrave, Ben Sennett, I think are all okay. But I do think guys like Ben Sennett, Cade Otton, anyone past that ADP probably won't get drafted. Maybe in some leagues they'll get drafted. You might be able to fight for them on the waiver wire if you would like to do so. In terms of available wide receivers, so we do see Josh Downs gone at the 11.2. If you wanted to go wide receiver with one of these final picks, I like Rashid Shaheed, Brandon Cooks, and Tavon Wicks, Jahan Dotson, Ricky Pearsall. Then moving even later past that, like maybe you have one more bench spot in your league. I like guys like Demario Douglas, Malachi Corley is interesting. And then I like DeMarcus Robinson of the Rams. I think he's going to have plenty of opportunity in that offense this year. So still plenty of names that you guys could go with. In terms of running backs here, you're just purely handcuffing players, in my opinion. I mean, there are valuable handcuffs here. Marshawn Lloyd, Tyler Algier, a little bit later, Damian Pierce. There's some other interesting rookie names like Vidal, but and maybe like Bucky Irving or Braylon Allen, but no one that I feel like you have to go out and draft in terms of like redraft formats. I think Ray Davis just went off the board is an okay selection too, but nobody that I feel like you have to necessarily jump the gun for. So the way things are looking, I mean, hopefully we have the opportunity to just take Jared Goff. You just never know if one of these teams is going to take a second quarterback. I don't really feel like they need to, but you don't know, right? People draft weird sometimes. So if we get Goff and then Jaden Daniels is there still at 13.4, I'll take both those guys. If Daniels is not there at the 13.4, then I will simply go with a different position, right? So let's see what happens. Cole Kmet gone there. Okay, so Jared Goff is here, so we'll take him off the board and move right along. I think it's important at this point in the draft to make sure you kind of have a queue set of guys that you do like, and make sure, if you haven't done so already, really get comfortable with these later rounds and players that you think are worth drafting in these later rounds. Because then you're not going to feel like panicked at the end of your draft, and just make sure you're getting more familiar with some of these wide receiver twos, wide receiver threes, handcuff, running backs, later round tight ends, and quarterbacks, whatever it may be. All right, so there goes Jaden Daniels, and that team ends up with Anthony Richardson and Jaden Daniels, which I think is a lot of fun, maybe a little bit risky, but a lot of fun. But I'm okay with Goff. We'll just take Rashid Shaheed here. I think he's a perfectly fine final selection. If we were going to go with another quarterback, I'd probably just go Matthew Stafford, honestly. But I think Stafford probably won't get drafted here. He's a guy I could fight for on the waiver wire. And really, I don't think he brings that same type of upside that a Jaden Daniels would bring to this roster. So we'll go Shaheed, who I think is a great, like, kind of final round selection. I loved him last year as well. Kind of disappointed, but we're getting a lot of buzz around him in terms of training camp. And he's a true wide receiver 2 behind Chris Olave in this offense. So I think he's going to have plenty of opportunity this year. But here is a look at the roster to kind of end things here. We go Goff at quarterback, Goddard at tight end. With this strategy, I think you always come out with just a good, solid roster to go into this season with. And for me, like, you're not going to have the most upside at quarterback and tight end potentially, but when you break things down, right, you look at Jared Goff last year, he was still a top 8 quarterback in fantasy. You look at Dallas Goddard, maybe not well, honestly, the last 3 years has been a top 15 tight end in full PPR scoring formats. So we still get good enough players at tight end and quarterback. And when we look at the rest of this roster, I think we're just set for the whole season, right? We got Henry, Kamara as our starting running backs. And then on the bench, we got Zamir White, Jonathan Brooks, and Blake Corum. So we're going to have to wait a little bit for Jonathan Brooks, but I think once he really starts to get rolling in that offense, a great upside selection for us. Then Blake Corum, just a nice rookie handcuff and a very, very high-powered offense for the Rams. We get Amon-Ra St. Brown here as our wide receiver 1, Devontae Adams as our wide receiver 2. Beautiful. And the rest of the wide receivers on the team: Rashee Rice, Christian Watson, Jamison Williams, and Rashid Shaheed. Plenty of upside on that bench. Great value pick in Rashee Rice and Christian Watson. I think even Jamison Williams, to be honest. So a good looking roster head to toe there. It's a beautiful mock draft completed. There's the rest of the 13th round for you guys to see. So Stafford did get selected. So did Cousins. But you guys can see who else got selected in this draft. And that will end the video. So if you guys did enjoy the content today or find it helpful, be sure to hit that subscribe button down below. Come join the community. Come join the Catch fam. Hope you guys do whatever I can this season to help you win your fantasy leagues, your fantasy championships. This is all we do all year long: free fantasy football content, redraft, dynasty, and best ball. If you're into that, come join the community. Like I said, outside of that, if you have any fantasy football questions, drop them down below. Get back to you whenever I can, and let me know what you guys thought of today's team, of today's mock overall, and make sure to join our next live stream so you guys can get into some of these mock drafts or check out some of the real fantasy football drafts that I have been doing all offseason long on Underdog Fantasy. With that, I will say thank you guys so much for watching and or listening, and remember, you saw it here on The Catch.